The Galactic War Council announces that artificial intelligence will replace all living tacticians. Humans, known for their reckless creativity, are dismissed as unpredictable liabilities. The last human strategist, Admiral Elias Cross, is retired with ceremony but no respect. The last broadcast from Earth was never meant to be a farewell. It came across the deep space comm channels as a distorted fragment, half static, half voice bleeding through the void like a ghost's whisper. The crew of the Vigilant Dawn, a Terran exploration vessel for light years from home, froze at their stations as the signal flared on every monitor. Captain Elias Kane stepped forward, his boots thudding on the deck plating. His hand hovered over the console as the voice repeated in the background. A wavering loop. "We are still here. We are still." Lieutenant Mara Vallon, the ship's comms officer, stared at the display. Her fingers danced across the controls, trying to clear the interference. "Signal origin is confirmed, Earth, or what's left of it." Her voice cracked at the last words. The Vigilant Dawn had been gone for 7 years. In that time, Earth had been cut off, no messages, no ships, no confirmation of survival. Rumors had spread through the deep colonies that Earth had been hit by a weapon no one could identify, that a quarantine zone had been declared by the Galactic Conclave, that humanity's homeworld was nothing more than cinders. Now there was proof, though proof of what no one could say. Kane swallowed hard. "Put it on all decks. Everyone needs to hear this." The ship's internal speakers came alive with the broken message, and in crew quarters, engineering bays, and observation decks, people stopped mid-task to listen. Old memories flooded back: the smell of ocean air, the hum of city streets, the laughter of families long left behind. The sound was not just a signal, it was a heartbeat. But Kane's eyes were on the star map projected in front of them. If the signal was real, then something had either survived the catastrophe or wanted them to believe it. And in this galaxy, bait could be just as dangerous as silence. Mara's voice broke the tension. "Sir, there's something else. The transmission. It's not just a broadcast. It's a coordinate set, and it's not on Earth." Kane's brow furrowed. "Where?" "An uncharted system, 23 light days from here. No records in Conclave databases. No known colonies." She hesitated, then added, "The packet's encrypted in an old Terran military cipher, pre-expansion era. The kind no one's used in over a century." That got the attention of everyone on the bridge. The old ciphers weren't just obsolete, they were buried, locked away with classified wartime data from the earliest days of humanity's jump into the stars. Chief Engineer Darius Holt spoke up from the back. "You're saying someone dug up tech and codes from the first expansion? That's like finding a musket in a plasma war, or a trap from someone who knows our history," Kane said. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. In the years since humanity joined the Conclave, it had fought for respect and survival against larger, older civilizations. Some allies had become friends, others had stayed enemies with a polite smile. But one truth held steady: Earth was humanity's anchor. Without it, they were a scattered people. Without it, they were vulnerable. Kane knew the crew wanted to believe. He wanted to believe. But he also knew how many times hope had been used as a weapon. Still, if there was even a chance— "Helm," he said finally, his voice hardening, "set a course for those coordinates. And Mara, keep decoding. I want to know exactly what we're flying into." The stars outside the Vigilant Dawn shifted as the ship's engines came alive. In the observation deck, crew members watched the familiar constellations twist and blur into streaks of light. Somewhere out there, beyond the edges of mapped space, something had called to them, and whether it was salvation or doom, they were going to answer. What no one on board knew not yet was that the signal had reached more than just them. Across the Conclave, in shadowed halls of power, alien eyes had turned toward the same coordinates, and not all of them intended to arrive as friends. The galaxy had rules written in ink older than Earth's first civilizations, and one of those rules was clear. Humans do not belong on the front lines. They called it the Combat Exclusion Protocol, buried deep within the Galactic Conclave's law archives, written just a few years after humanity's first contact. The reasons were officially rooted in policy, but everyone knew the truth. The alien races didn't trust humanity's instincts. Too emotional, too unpredictable, too violent under stress. The Conclave's generals whispered that humans would snap in battle. that their primitive history of endless wars meant they could never adapt to coordinated galactic military command. So Earth was allowed into the Conclave. Yes, they were given a seat at the diplomatic table. They could trade, explore, even help with relief efforts. But when it came to combat, humans were kept in the safe zone. Observers, not participants. Ambassador Rin Valor hated that rule. He stood now in the Grand Hall of Voices, watching 1,000 alien delegates speak in their strange tongues, each voice layered and filtered through translation drones that buzzed overhead. The hall was vast, a cathedral of politics. Light spilled down through crystalline panels in the ceiling, refracted into shimmering rivers across the marble floor. Holographic banners of each member species floated high above their delegates: the feathered Zalthari, the crystalline Virene, the serpentine Corrosia, and dozens more. And somewhere near the very back of the assembly, Earth's banner hung blue-green, white just, another flag in a crowd of giants. It burned Rin inside. To his left stood Commander Lena Holt, tall and rigid in her formal dark blue uniform, her jaw clenched as she stared down at the floor. She was a decorated officer from Earth's unified space forces, decorated for training operations, not actual war. The Conclave never let her test her skill where it mattered. To Rin's right leaned Dr. Malik Soren, the opposite of Lena in every way, loose, almost casual, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Malik had a background in Zenep psychology, but he also happened to be one of Earth's best unconventional tacticians. His mind worked sideways, seeing patterns others couldn't. Both of them had been handpicked by Rin for Earth's delegation. Both of them shared his frustration, and today Rin intended to change things. The session's topic: a proposal from Earth to lift the combat exclusion protocol, to let humans serve in Conclave defense forces. Predictably, it was not going well. From the high dais at the front of the hall, the high speaker, a towering, four-armed Threxian whose skin shimmered like molten silver, spoke into the assembly. Ambassador Valor, while the Conclave respects humanity's enthusiasm, our decision remains firm. History is clear. Your species thrives in chaos. Galactic defense requires discipline. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The crystalline Viren delegate stood, her voice chiming like glass struck by wind. We have seen your war archives. Centuries of bloodshed over territory, ideology, or insult. Your species wages war over anything. We cannot risk such volatility in coordinated fleets. Rin kept his face neutral, though he felt Lena stiffen beside him. Malik's eyebrow twitched upward, his mind already spinning through counters. And then, as if to make matters worse, a ripple of alarm swept the chamber. Delegates turned toward the far end of the hall as a side door burst open. A battered Agrathian courier stumbled inside, his iridescent scales torn and smeared with blackened plasma burns. He clutched a fractured datapad, shouting in his own language until the translation drones caught up. The Archon swarm has breached the Hellion belt. Entire sectors, falling ships, devoured millions at risk. The Archon swarm. The name was enough to drain the color from several alien faces. An ancient, hive-minded predator species, long thought to have been pushed beyond the rim of the galaxy. Now, they were here. The High Speaker's voice boomed over the chaos. Dispatch immediate fleets to Sector Helion. Summon all Conclave defense units. Then, almost as an afterthought, accept human personnel, in accordance with standing protocol. And that was Rin's breaking point. He stepped forward, voiced sharp as a blade. High Speaker, you are making a mistake. The hall froze. All eyes turned toward the lone human ambassador, standing defiantly in the center of the assembly. Every moment you delay is another world lost, Rin continued. You think our history makes us dangerous. You're right, it does. But you've forgotten something important. Dangerous isn't always bad. Sometimes, dangerous is exactly what you need. A murmur rolled through the chamber. Some delegates looked offended, others thoughtful. The Viren delegate's glass-like voice cut in. And what would you suggest, Ambassador? That we place untested humans at the vanguard of our fleets in the middle of a swarm incursion? Yes, Rin said without hesitation, because the swarm fights like nothing you've seen in your wars. It adapts, it hunts, it breaks the rules. You need someone who knows how to break them back. Beside him, Lena lifted her chin, eyes burning. Malik's mouth curved into a slow, dangerous smile. The High Speaker's gaze swept over them, unreadable. You would risk your own people in battle against the Arkan swarm. Rin didn't flinch. No, I would offer them. The chamber lights dimmed to a deep amber as the conclave's central dais rotated, aligning with the incoming delegation. The polished black stone beneath Ambassador Kellen's boots reflected the subtle shimmer of the galaxy's political heart. And for a fleeting moment, he wondered if this was how ancient warriors felt before stepping into the arena. Beside him, Captain Mara Voss stood at attention, her face unreadable, though her gloved hands flexed slightly. It wasn't nerves. Kellen had long since learned she didn't get nervous, but the quiet calculation of someone weighing every possible outcome. Dr. Elias Reese lingered just behind them, his satchel slung over one shoulder, gaze darting between alien faces, as though each one was a new equation to solve. The floor beneath them vibrated softly, a signal that the speaker of the conclave had risen. The great Cerathian figure, all shimmering scales and unfurling crests, regarded them with cool detachment. Human delegation, the speaker began, the translator rendering the voice as deep and cold as interstellar night. The Council's ban on human military involvement stands. Your petition has been heard and denied. The matter is closed. Kellen had expected resistance, even hostility, but the flat finality of those words still struck him like a blow. Around the chamber, alien representatives exchanged brief glances, many of them smug, others indifferent. A handful looked uncomfortable, as if they had quietly hoped for a different outcome. Mara's jaw tightened. Permission to speak denied. The speaker cut her off, without even looking in her direction. Elias stepped forward unexpectedly. "You can deny our request," he said, his voice calm but carrying across the chamber. "But you can't deny reality." A murmur swept the assembly. Humans were not supposed to address the conclave outside of formal turns. Kellen closed his eyes for a heartbeat, then decided not to stop him. Elias continued. "The Arkrith fleets are pushing deeper into neutral sectors every day. You think they'll respect your treaties, your borders, your polite debates. They won't. And when they reach this station, it won't be a question of if you need soldiers. It'll be whether you have any left." The speaker's crest shifted slightly. Not quite a sign of concession, but not dismissal either. Kellen caught it. He stepped into the moment. "We're not here to posture. We're here because humanity has fought enemies like this before, not with superior numbers, not with overwhelming firepower. We've survived because we adapt faster, because we think differently. You can keep us on the sidelines, but when the Arkroth breach your fleets, you'll remember this conversation." For a long moment the chamber was silent, except for the faint hum of gravitic stabilizers. Then the speaker inclined their head. "We will review certain contingencies. This discussion is adjourned." It was not victory, but it was a crack in the wall. And Kellen knew, sometimes, that's all you needed. Outside the chamber, Mara exhaled slowly. "Contingencies. That's conclave speak, for we don't want to admit we might be wrong." Elias adjusted his satchel. "Or it means they've started thinking about what happens when the Arkroth don't stop." Kellen looked toward the distant stars beyond the docking bays. "Then we'd better give them a demonstration they can't ignore." The skies over Helio Station burned crimson, not from fire, but from the glow of the planetary gas giant it orbited. The station hung in the upper atmosphere like a jewel suspended in blood-colored clouds, a shimmering hub where the galactic conclave's military elite trained for war. For the first time, humans were not among them. Lena Vera's boots clanged against the steel walkway as she stepped into the observation deck. She wasn't supposed to be here. The human section of Helio Station was limited to diplomatic quarters, no access to the combat zones, no entry into the command simulation rooms. But Malik's badge code worked, and right now, Malik's badge was in her pocket. She stood before the massive viewing window, watching alien strike craft streak across the sky in complex maneuvers. Engines roared, trails of plasma cutting across the clouds. 2 Avron fighter wings swooped into a spiral formation, their needle-like craft pivoting with inhuman precision. Lena's jaw tightened. "They think we can't do that," she muttered to herself. The sound of the door behind her made her stiffen. Ambassador Vera came the deep, gravelly voice. "You're a long way from the negotiation floor." It was Commander Soltran Kor, the station's training overseer, scaled. Broad-shouldered giant of the Torkin warrior caste. He approached with heavy, deliberate steps, each one punctuated by the rasp of his breathing. Lena didn't flinch. Observation isn't against the rules. It is when you're watching restricted exercises, Kor replied, his golden eyes narrowing. These maneuvers require reflex speeds humans simply do not possess. She turned to face him fully. Or maybe you've never given us a chance to prove we do. Kor studied her in silence for several moments. Then, a smirk, a slow, predatory one spread across his face. You want to prove yourself human? Be careful what you ask for. Meanwhile, deep in the Conclave's strategic core, Tessa Oren sat in a dim-lit chamber, surrounded by three-dimensional star charts. In the center floated a holographic representation of the Karnath Expansa remote border region no one wanted to patrol. She'd been running intel scans for weeks, convinced there was an anomaly in the Expanse's sensor data. And now, the numbers confirmed it. The distortions weren't just background radiation, they were movement patterns. Tessa Malik's voice came through her earpiece, his tone hushed. You're not going to like this. What is it? She asked without looking up. I just intercepted a cumburst from the outpost at Vega Null. They've gone silent. All of them. Tessa's fingers froze over the console. That's the third border station in 2 weeks. She zoomed in on the hologram. The distortion readings lined up perfectly with the disappearances. Something was advancing toward Conclave space and fast. Back at Helio Station, Lena's challenge had spiraled into something far bigger than she intended. Kor had gathered a small crowd of officers from multiple species. Demonstration, he announced, his voice carrying over the open hangar. The human ambassador believes she can match Torkin pilots in live simulation. Murmurs rippled through the alien onlookers. Some were amused, others openly laughed. Kor tossed her a neural-linked helmet. You'll be up against Lieutenant Zarek, first to land 3 confirmed kills, and the simulation wins. The helmet was heavier than she expected, its interface wrapping cold metal along her jaw. Lena strapped in, climbing into a simulator pod that sealed shut with a hydraulic hiss. The hangar lights dimmed, her vision filled with a vast star field, the HUD marking her position. A Torkin fighter icon appeared ahead, already moving at breakneck speed. The match began. Lena had only a fraction of a second to react before the alien pilot was on her. The Torkin ship danced like a phantom, vanishing from her crosshairs every time she lined up a shot. Sweat beaded her forehead. Think faster. She stopped chasing. Instead, she predicted. Every maneuver Zarek pulled followed a rhythm, so she broke hers. She dipped low, faked a stall, then spun into his attack vector. One hit, then another. The crowd's laughter died. Zarek pushed harder, his craft looping overhead. She let him overcommit then, cut her thrusters, and slid behind him. 3. The simulation blinked out, replaced by the stunned faces of the alien officers staring through the viewing glass. Kor didn't smile, but he didn't mock her either. Instead, he stepped forward, voiced low enough only she could hear. Maybe I was wrong about you. Far away beyond the edges of Conclave space, a new fleet was forming. Jagged, black-armored ships gathered in silence, their formation tight, their engines cold. No transmission, no declaration-only movement. And at their center, something alive pulsed within a carrier the size of a moon. It had been a long time since the galaxy had heard from the Keth Dominion, but they were coming. The meeting chamber of the Galactic Conclave was silent in a way that felt wrong. It wasn't the comfortable silence of diplomacy at rest. It was the heavy stillness of predators watching each other. Every representative acutely aware that something dangerous was moving beneath the surface. The holographic projection above the center table displayed a swarm of unknown warships closing in on the Clary border worlds. No identifying insignia, no communication, no hesitation. Ambassador Celine Vey kept her hands clasped tight, her human face unreadable. Her eyes, however, scanned every delegate in the room, gauging the flickers of fear they tried to hide. High Chancellor Drovan of the Vexori broke the silence first, his voice like shifting stone. This enemy will not stop at our borders. They do not negotiate. We have seen them before once and barely survived. The Conclave murmured uneasily. From the far end of the table, Admiral Kuroth of the Oran Coalition's fleet rose to his full height, towering and armored. We will need every fleet, every soldier, every defense, including those you have forbidden. His eyes locked on Celine. Everyone knew what he meant. The ban on humans and frontline combat roles had stood for 15 years. To the Conclave, humans were volatile brave, yes, but reckless and unpredictable. Liability. Celine didn't speak, not yet. She knew the tide of opinion wasn't ready to turn with words alone. The Clary delegate, a lithe creature of crystal feathers, hissed softly. "You would have us risk our worlds on the unpredictability of your species. We remember Titan's Gate." Selene almost smiled. Of course they remember Titan's Gate. One human frigate, outnumbered 10 to 1, had held the line long enough for the evacuation of 4 Clary colonies. Yes, there had been chaos, and yes, the human captain had ignored direct orders, but they had won. Before Selene could answer, the chamber doors slid open, and Commander Eric Danner stepped in. Former Earth Defense Force, now officially retired due to the ban. He looked like a soldier stripped of his battlefield, but his presence filled the room. He didn't speak to the delegates. He looked at Selene. "They want proof," he said quietly. "Then let's give it to them." The proof came in the form of a war simulation, a classified combat test in the Oran military training arena, where the galaxy's most advanced species measured themselves against each other in controlled scenarios. It was meant to be a safe display. It was not safe. Selene watched from the control deck as Eric, alongside Lieutenant Mara Chen and Specialist David Holt, strapped into their Neuralink pods. Against them, the Conclave's best multi-species tactical team, led by a Clary strategist who had never lost. The simulation activated. Instantly, the human team didn't just fight, they adapted. Alien crews followed standard protocols. Humans broke them in ways that looked like madness until the results hit. A Clary flanking maneuver was anticipated not by predictive AI, but by Holt's gut instinct. Mara didn't aim for the flagship's weapon, she targeted the coolant system, forcing the enemy to burn out its own reactors under emergency override. Eric took the simulation's terrain itself as a weapon, luring enemy cruisers into the gravitational pull of an artificial moon. Within 30 minutes, the match was over. The humans had achieved complete domination against a force that was supposed to crush them. Silence again. But this time, it was different. Selene's gaze swept the observation deck. She saw it in their faces, the dawning realization, the first cracks in the prejudice that had held humanity back. But then the simulation feed blinked red. An alert appeared. Unscheduled entry detected. Unknown vessels breaching training zone. This wasn't part of the test. Admiral Karoth slammed a fist on the console. "That's no simulation. Those are real ships." Selene's breath caught. And deep inside the simulation chamber, Eric's voice came through the comms.com and almost amused. "Looks like the test just turned into the real thing." The dust from the collapsed corridor still hung in the air, a dull haze swirling in the emergency lighting. Relin stood against the far wall, his dark eyes locked on the humans as though finally seeing them for the first time. Captain Mira Nealon's voice was low but unwavering as she checked her sidearm and stepped over the broken alien masonry. Malik covered her, the sharp arc of his rifle cutting through the shadowed corners. Tessa moved ahead, the small device in her hand humming faintly, a human-built seismic scanner. Cobbled from spare parts, scavenged from 3 different alien systems. It had taken her all of 20 minutes to reprogram it for this planet's crust composition. To the other species of the Conclave, that would have been impossible without a week-long team effort. To Tessa, it was Tuesday. "Movement," she whispered, the scanner's holographic grid shifting as faint vibrations tickled its sensors. "Not rock slides. This is controlled. Something's tracking us." Relin stiffened, his voice barely audible. "The Kier Dominion's forward scouts. They shouldn't be this deep inside." "They are," Mira cut in, her tone brooking no argument. "And they know we're here." The corridor ahead split into 2 paths, one narrow, winding upward toward the surface, the other a steep descent into the lower chambers of the ruin. The air carried a faint metallic temps that wasn't natural. Malik scanned both directions, jaw set. Up leads to open sky. Down leads to whoever's making those vibrations. "They'll expect us to run for daylight," Mira said, glancing to her team. "So we don't." Relin's frill stiffened in alarm. "You'd walk straight into the enemy." Myra didn't answer right away. She looked at Malik, then at Tessa, and in their eyes saw no hesitation. "We don't walk," she said finally. "We hunt." They descended. The light thinned as they moved deeper, the dust giving way to a thick underground humidity that clung to their skin. The architecture here was older Leyland script, etched into walls, half swallowed by roots and mineral growth. It felt like walking through the ribcage of something ancient. Then movement ahead. Shapes flickering in the half-dark limbs, too long. Posture too predatory for anything but Kier soldiers. Their armor gleamed faintly, segmented like an insect shell, and their eyes burned dim red in the shadows. Tessa set the scanner on the floor and tapped a sequence. The hum deepened. Beneath their feet, a ripple of vibration spread outward, bouncing back in waves. She watched the holographic map resolve Zix's hostiles ahead to flanking routes, and one above. "They're surrounding us," she said calmly. Myra smiled faintly. "Good." The first Kier lunged from the shadows, blade arms slicing through the air where Myra had been a heartbeat earlier. She sidestepped, drove her sidearm up under its thorax, and fired twice. The creature folded silently. Malik's rifle barked once, twice, a controlled rhythm of fire, as two more went down. The last three didn't attack, they withdrew, pulling back into the dark. "That's not retreat," Malik muttered. "They're repositioning." Mira nodded. "And they're not the only ones down here, because somewhere deeper, beneath even the enemy's careful footsteps, Tessa's scanner had picked up something else, something massive, slow and ancient, its vibrations unlike anything they'd ever felt, and it was moving toward them. The War Council chamber was silent, save for the faint hum of holoprojectors displaying the shifting foot lines. The alien representatives sat in tense semicircles, their colors and markings muted with unease. Captain Darius Holt's voice cut through the quiet. "You don't have months. You don't even have weeks. The Dravik fleets are burning through your border defenses like they're paper." The Kratal admiral's mandibles clicked sharply. "And what do you suggest, human? That we abandon every system in their path?" Holt leaned forward, his gaze steady. "No. I suggest you let my people fight where you can't." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Even after the events of Orlan's break, where humans had bought the Conclave 3 precious weeks, the idea of putting them in full-scale command was still unthinkable to many. Ambassador Threx of the Veil, one of the more sympathetic voices, spoke carefully. "Captain, your kind has proven resourceful. But what you're proposing direct deployment to the Dravik front would violate centuries-old Conclave battle doctrine." Malik shifted in his seat. "Doctrine won't matter if the Dravik win. You'll have no rules to follow when there's no Conclave left to govern." A long, uneasy silence followed. Rin Valor, who had been watching quietly from the shadows near the wall, stepped forward. "I've seen them fight," he said, his voice carrying the weight of reluctant respect, not like soldiers, like predators defending their last refuge. "It's chaotic, unpredictable, dangerous, but it works." Some alien delegates looked away, uncomfortable. Others stared at him in disbelief. Was the same ambassador who had once called humans the galaxy's most unstable liability. The floor vote that followed wasn't unanimous. It wasn't even close, but the motion passed barely. Humanity was granted full combat deployment under its own command. That night, Holt stood on the observation deck of the Sol's Edge, watching the Conclave fleets reorient. Warships of every design, from glittering Veil cruisers to hulking Kratal dreadnoughts, shifted position to follow the new strategy. Tessa approached quietly, a datapad in her hand. "First strike teams are assembled. We're going in tomorrow." He didn't turn to face her. His eyes stayed on the stars. "Tomorrow, we find out if they were right to trust us." Far beyond the fleet, in the shadow of a dead moon, Dravik forces were already gathering for their next push. Their sensor sweeps would find nothing but empty void. They would never see the humans coming until it was far too late. The Sol's Edge moved under silent running, its hull darkened, its engines barely a whisper against the void. In her wake, 12 other human warships followed, each one carrying crews that had spent the last 24 hours in tense, deliberate preparation. No speeches, no grand declarations, just final checks, whispered orders, and the click of weapons being loaded. Captain Holt stood at the forward command rail, eyes locked on the tactical display. The Dravik staging zone floated ahead, a scattered formation of their spearhead fleets, supported by spindly logistics craft and guarded by layers of sensor nets. Tess's voice broke the quiet. "We're inside their perimeter." Stealth integrity holding, good, Holt said. "Prep the decoys." Within moments, small, coffin-shaped pods launched from the Sol's Edge's flanks. They drifted forward, releasing bursts of distorted energy patterns, mimicking the signatures of retreating Conclave patrols. The Dravik didn't react at first. Then, as predicted, several of their patrol craft peeled off to intercept what they thought were easy kills. That was the first thread pulled from their defensive net. Now, Holt ordered, the humans moved like a knife through cloth. 3 ships burst from hiding, their drives flaring in sudden acceleration, unleashing coordinated railgun fire that shredded a Dravic picket ship before its shields even flickered. Torpedoes lanced out toward the logistics carrier's massive, ungainly vessels, whose destruction would cripple the Dravic supply chain for weeks. Tessa's voice was calm despite the chaos. Multiple impacts. Their carriers are burning. The Dravic scrambled, their main warships turning too late to catch the fast-moving human fleet. For every shot they fired, 2 more human strikes tore into their lines from unexpected angles. It was less a battle and more a surgical dismantling. Malik's fighter wing cut across the enemy formation like wolves through scattered prey. His voice crackled over the comms. "Holt, they're breaking. Recommend we push deeper before they regroup." Holt hesitated only a second. "Do it. Make them feel it." What followed was the kind of close-range fighting no Conclave species would ever dare. Attempt human ships darting through the wreckage, slamming point-blank fire into enemy engines, using debris as cover, turning the Dravic's own disarray into a weapon. By the time the Sol's Edge called withdrawal, the staging zone was a graveyard. Back aboard, Holt looked at the casualty reports light by human standards, unacceptably high by Conclave ones. He knew what the alien leadership would say. He knew some would call the victory reckless, but the Dravic would remember this. For the first time, humanity hadn't just defended, they had hunted. The Galactic Conclave chamber was uncharacteristically silent. Representatives of dozens of species stared at the shimmering tactical projection in the center of the hall. An animated replay of the Sol's Edge raid on the Dravic staging zone. The footage looped over the moment a human destroyer skimmed within a hair's breadth of a Dravic cruiser, firing point-blank into its bridge before vanishing behind debris. Every time it played, murmurs rippled through the room. It was not the style of war the Conclave was accustomed to. The Clarion ambassador finally broke the silence, his voice low and sharp. They didn't just strike, they taunted. They fought as if they did not fear death. From across the chamber, the Vathari delegate's crest quivered. They dismantled an entire Dravic forward position, with a force 1/4 its size. This is not logical. Ambassador Rourke, the sole human in the chamber, did not smile. He didn't need to. "This is human logic," he said simply. "You wanted us in your war. This is what that means." A long pause followed, until the Threka representative leaned forward, mandibles clicking in thought. "And what do the Dravic say?" The answer came not from Rourke, but from the Council's intelligence liaisona, Drevi female, who looked visibly unsettled. She tapped the console, and a grainy transmission appeared. The Dravic warlord's voice was harsh, the edges fraying with something rare for his kind uncertainty. "These humans, they do not fight for territory. They fight to break us. They move where no mind expects. They kill not for advantage, but for effect. We underestimated them." The chamber fell into heavier silence. For some of the Conclave's senior members, this was a victory proof that humanity was an asset. For others, it was deeply unsettling. A weapon like this could not be controlled forever. Meanwhile, far from the politics aboard the Sol's Edge, Captain Holt read the same intercepted message in his ready room. Tessa stood nearby, arms folded. "They're rattled," she said. Holt nodded. "Rattled animals get dangerous. They'll change their patterns now." Malik's voice came over the ship's intercom. "Captain, you'll want to see this. Our scouts just picked up something unusual at the fringe of the Kuiver Belt." Holt rose slowly. He'd learned something in the past. Month's unusual was rarely good. The Sol's Edge dropped out of slipspace at the fringe of the Kuiver Belt. From the bridge, Holt could see it a sprawling field of shattered asteroids drifting in slow orbits, lit by the cold blue light of a nearby dwarf star. The fragments glittered like glass, but there was nothing beautiful about the readings on the sensors. Captain Malik said, his eyes narrowing at the data feed. "Half of these asteroids are hollow. The mass readings don't match the size." Tessa leaned forward over his shoulder. "You're saying they're ships?" "More like shells," Malik replied. "Cavities big enough to hide cruisers inside, and these thermal traces." The ship's AI cut in, voice low and clinical. Multiple energy spikes detected within the belt. Pattern matches Dravic Warfleet, drives 33 ships, minimum concealed. The bridge fell silent for a heartbeat. Holt knew the Kuiver Belt wasn't on any official Dravic deployment map. This wasn't a staging zone, it was a trap. One designed to catch anything from the Conclave moving between sectors. "Plot us a high vector out of their net," Holt ordered. Before Malik could respond, The AI's tone sharpened. New contact. Massive. The main display zoomed in on a single drifting asteroid, far larger than the rest. The surface was pitted and blackened, but a faint, unnatural light pulsed from beneath the rock. The AI overlaid a scan object is not solid. Central structure identified a known configuration. Power output exceeds Dravik flagship levels by 300%. Tessa's breath caught. That's not Dravik tech. The realization sank into the room like ice. This was something else. Something ancient, buried here long before the war. And, as if on cue, the pulses quickened. The asteroid began to split, the rock layers peeling away like the petals of a dying flower, revealing a colossal construct-leak alien, utterly unlike anything in known records. Malik swore under his breath. "Captain, whatever that thing is, it's waking up." On the edge of the Kuiper Belt, the hidden Dravik ships began to move not toward the Sol's edge, but toward the construct. Even the enemy seemed desperate to get to it first. Holt didn't hesitate. Battle stations. We're not letting either side take whatever's in there. The Kuiper Belt erupted into motion. Dravik warships surged from their hiding places, drives burning like predator eyes in the darkness. They didn't open fire on the Sol's edge not yet. Their attention was locked on the unfolding petals of the massive construct, their formations converging like sharks to blood. The construct itself was changing shape. Its panels shifted in ways that didn't make mechanical sense folding through themselves, slipping along curves that implied dimensions Holt's mind couldn't comfortably hold. Its surface shimmered between metal and something fluid, as if undecided what it wanted to be. "Captain," the AI reported, "energy readings are still rising. Current trajectory, unpredictable. But whatever it does next will affect everything in this sector." Tessa kept her eyes on the tactical overlay. Dravik ships are positioning for containment. They're not going in blind. They know what this thing is. Malik shook his head. Or they think they do. The Sol's edged sensors caught the first pulsing invisible wave that rolled across the belt, rippling through debris fields and slamming into ship shields. Warning alarms screamed as the pulse registered. "Shields down to 85%, the AI said, calm despite the impact. Holt steadied himself against the console. That wasn't an attack, it was a scan. It's mapping everything out here. Seconds later, a second pulse followed, but this one had teeth. 2 Dravik cruisers simply came apart. No fire, no explosion, just the quiet, horrifying disassembly of matter. Hull plates splitting into molecules that drifted like dust motes. The construct didn't slow. Panic flared in the Dravik formation. Several ships broke ranks, abandoning their assault vectors. But the largest 3 capital-class destroyers held position, angling toward the construct's newly revealed central aperture. "They're trying to dock," Tessa realized. Holt made the call. "Engage them. We're not letting anything get inside before we do." The Sol's Edge's guns roared to life, streaks of tungsten and plasma slashing across the belt. The Dravik destroyers returned fire immediately, forcing Holt to weave the corvette between drifting rock and expanding debris clouds. Malik locked a missile salvo and sent it screaming into the lead destroyer's flank. The detonation tore through its starboard drives, sending the ship spinning helplessly into an asteroid. The remaining 2 destroyers pushed harder, but then the construct reacted. A beam of impossible color lanced from its core, touching the nearest destroyer for a single heartbeat. When the light faded, the massive warship was simply gone. No wreckage, no debris, just empty space where it had been. The last destroyer hesitated too long. The Sol's Edge dove in, close enough to see the heat rippling along its armor, and Malik's final missile found its mark. The explosion lit the belt like a sunrise. On the bridge, Holt exhaled, but only once. Because on the construct's surface, something new was happening. A docking corridor was extending, not toward the Dravik, toward them. The docking corridor locked onto them with surgical precision. It didn't latch in the clumsy, magnetic way of ordinary station arms. This thing wove itself around the Sol's Edge like a growing vine, its segments extruding from the construct's surface in perfect silence. The metalith, it was metal shifted color and texture to match their hull, as if camouflaging the connection. No one on the bridge spoke. Even the AI seemed to pause. Finally, Tessa broke the silence. "It wants us inside." "That's one interpretation," Malik muttered. "Could also be lining us up for something worse." Holt stared at the feed from the docking cameras. The corridor was sealed. No visible seams, no windows, just an invitation or a trap that pulsed faintly with a light like a slow heartbeat. Options, Holt asked. The AI's voice was steady, but underlined with a caution Holt rarely heard. We can detach and risk provoking an unknown response, or we can proceed into the structure. Sensors detect breathable atmosphere beyond the interface, but it is changing. Changing how? It is adapting itself to match human parameters. That sent a ripple through the crew. The construct wasn't just reacting, it was learning. Holt's jaw tightened. Prep an away team. We go in, no heroics. We get answers, or we get out. Malik grinned humorlessly. Guess who's drawing the short straw for Point Man? The airlock hissed open. Stepping into the docking corridor was like walking into the inside of a living thing. The walls curved gently, covered in a surface that shifted between smooth metal and something almost organic. It was warm not from heat, but from a faint vibration, as if the whole structure had a pulse. As they moved forward, their helmet comms picked up sounds a distant, almost musical hum, harmonizing with itself. It wasn't random, it felt aware. Halfway down the corridor, the hum stopped. The wall ahead of them split open like an eyelid, revealing a vast chamber. It wasn't empty. Floating at the center was a figure, humanoid in silhouette, but translucent, its skin made of layered light. The figure didn't move, but Holt felt the weight of its attention like a hand pressing on the back of his neck. A voice not through their ears, but directly in their minds, spoke in perfect, unaccented English. "You are late," the voice echoed in Holt's skull, as real as his own thoughts. Not loud, not threatening, but certain, like someone stating the time of day. Malik's hand went to his sidearm, but Holt didn't miss the slight tremor in his grip. "Who are you?" Holt asked, forcing his voice steady. "And what do you mean? We're late." The figure's head tilted. The motion was small, deliberate, and deeply human. "I am not your enemy," it said not aloud, but with that same inner resonance. "I am the Sentinel. My task was to prepare for your arrival. You have delayed longer than expected." Tess's voice crackled in Holt's earpiece. "Captain, my sensors just spiked this. Whole chamber is alive with structured data. Whatever that thing is, it's broadcasting and listening at the same time. And it's not just aimed at us." Holt kept his eyes locked on the Sentinel. "You were expecting us." "Not you, specifically," the voice replied. "Your kind. The first signal was sent before your species learned to burn the sky for power. We have waited through the silence of your ignorance. Now the silence is broken," Malik muttered under his breath. "Cryptic, alien nonsense. Always the same." The Sentinel's gaze, or whatever passed for, it shifted toward him. "We speak as your mind can grasp. There is no time for precision. Your world has already been marked." That word "marked" landed in Holt's stomach like a stone. The figure didn't answer immediately. Instead, the chamber walls began to shift. The smooth surfaces split apart to reveal vast, moving shapes, fragments of space, like windows to other points in the galaxy. They saw ships, some sleek and familiar, some monstrous and utterly alien, flashing past in battles they couldn't hear. Planets burning, great arcs of light sweeping across the void like scythes. "This is not prophecy," the Sentinel said. "It is memory. The cycle returns. The pattern that comes for you has ended countless others, and your enemies are already here." At that, one of the window-like portals shifted. Holt's breath caught. The image wasn't distant. It was now, and it was close. A fleet, not human, not friendly, moving through the dark, two-oared soul space. Malik swore softly. So much for first contact being friendly. Holt's mind was already shifting to battle readiness. But a part of him couldn't shake the question. If this Sentinel had been waiting for them for centuries, why did it look almost human? The Sentinel stepped forward, the faint light on its surface pulsing in sync with Holt's own heartbeats, something he didn't think was a coincidence. "I appear in this form," it said, "because it is easier for you to trust what resembles your own image." Holt frowned. "You mean you shaped yourself to look human?" The Sentinel's head inclined slightly. "No, the truth is older. Your image was shaped to resemble mine." The words landed like a physical blow. Malik scoffed, but Holt noticed the tightness in his jaw. "You're saying humans are what? Copies?" "Descendants," the Sentinel replied. "The builders who made me seeded worlds with life that echoed their own. Your kind rose from that seed, forgotten by those who planted it. Forgotten until now." Tess's voice cut in over Captain, I don't like where this is going. If this thing is telling the truth, someone's been playing God with human history. The Sentinel's gaze didn't leave Holt, not someone many, and they will not all welcome your return to the galactic stage. Another portal window shifted. This time it showed a world Holt didn't recognize: lush forests, oceans glinting under a warm sun, and above it, an orbital ring shattered and burning. Alien vessels swarmed like hornets around the wreckage. This is what happens when the marked do not act, the Sentinel said. The fleet you saw. They are the Harrowers. They consume, not out of need, but out of fear. They remember the last time your bloodline held power. Holt tried to piece it together. So, humanity had a role in the galaxy before, and they erased us. The Sentinel's voice dimmed to almost a whisper in his mind. You were exiled to protect you. But exile is no longer safety. The Harrowers know where you are, and they will not hesitate. Malik turned to Holt, his soldier's instincts kicking in. Captain, if what this thing is saying is true, we've got two options: run back to Earth and brace for impact, or get whatever advantage it's offering and hit them first. The Sentinel finally stepped aside, revealing a path deeper into the chamber. Beyond, Holt glimpsed vast machinery, strange engines, suspended over a chasm, humming with restrained energy. This place, the Sentinel said, is the key. Your ancestors built it for the day you would return. It can give you a weapon the Harrowers cannot counter. But to awaken it, its gaze locked on Holt. You must decide what price humanity is willing to pay. The hum of the machinery seemed to deepen, vibrating in Holt's bones. The path was open. The choice was his. The chamber's air felt heavier as Holt stepped across the threshold. The moment his boot touched the inlaid metal floor, the hum of the ancient machinery deepened into a low, resonant chord. Lights flickered on in sequence, leading the way forward like a trail through darkness. Malik's eyes swept the space, his rifle angled down but ready. This is too easy, he muttered. Old ruins don't light themselves up for strangers. They do, the Sentinel replied, for heirs. Tessa's voice was low in Holt's ear. I'm running scans. Captain, these systems are broadcasting inside our comm channels, piggybacking on every frequency. I think it's her voice cut out. So did Malik's comm feed? Holt's HUD flickered, displaying a single line of alien script before going black. The only sound now was the steady thud of his own heartbeat and the hum of the colossal engines above. The Sentinel stopped in front of a vast circular platform in the center of the room. Around it, deep chasms fell away into darkness, their depths punctuated by faint flashes of light movement, as if something alive stirred far below. This, the Sentinel said, is the core gate. Your ancestors designed it to bind power beyond the reach of the Harrowers, but they also designed it to judge those who seek to use it. Holt's instincts screamed trap, but something in the Sentinel's tone suggested this wasn't mere theatrics. What kind of judgment? He asked. The Sentinel's eyes brightened. You will not be judged by me, but by the echoes of those who came before you. The floor beneath the platform shifted, splitting into 12 segments. From each, ghost-like figures rose humans, but not. Their features were sharp, their bearing regal, and their eyes glowed with the same pale light as the Sentinel's. One stepped forward, her voice echoing in Holt's mind. Blood of our blood, flesh of our seed, do you stand where we once stood? Do you claim the right to wield what we sealed away? Holt swallowed. If it means defending my people, yes. The figure's eyes narrowed in unison. Then prove you understand the cost. To awaken the core gate, you must give it something irreplaceable. The Harrowers cannot be defeated by strength alone. You must give memory. Holt frowned. Memory. The woman nodded. Your own or your species. The gate will take either. In exchange, it will give you the knowledge to destroy your enemies, but what you take, you will never give back. Malik glanced sharply at Holt. You can't be serious. That's not a weapon, it's amnesia dressed up as strategy. The Sentinel was silent, but its eyes never left Holt's face. And there, on that platform, Holt realized the weight of the choice. Sacrifice himself, erased everything he knew of who he was, or let the core gate strip humanity of its collective past, rewriting history in the process. The hum of the engines deepened again, as if urging him to decide. The chamber's light dimmed, as though the core gate itself had drawn a long, expectant breath. The ghostly council stood motionless, their gaze fixed on Holt. waiting for the decision that would either crown him savior or condemn him as the fool who hesitated. Malik's voice broke the stillness, tense but low. Holt, we walk away. We find another way. Once you give them what they want, there's no taking it back. Holt didn't answer immediately. He stepped closer to the glowing ring of the platform, feeling its warmth through his boots. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that any technology demanding a sacrifice this personal was not to be trusted. But in the corner of his mind, he also saw the images. Harrower fleets blotting out the stars, their biomechanical monstrosities swallowing colonies whole. What happens if I give you my memory? Holt asked quietly. The lead specter's voice filled the chamber. You will remain as you are in body and skill, but you will no longer remember who you were before this moment. Every face, every name, every triumph, every gone. You will fight with what remains, unburdened by the weight of the past. And if I give you humanity's collective memory, Holt pressed. You will buy them time, she replied. Enough time to strike before the harrowers adapt again. But the price will be steep. They will awaken into a galaxy they do not understand, stripped of their heritage. They will survive, but they will not know why they fought in the first place. Tessa's voice crackled faintly over comms, breaking through whatever interference had silenced her before. Captain, don't you dare. They always word these things to sound noble, but you're just feeding a machine, a banquet of souls. The Sentinel, silent until now, stepped forward. The core gate does not lie. It cannot. But it will take exactly what it promises and nothing less. Holt closed his eyes. He thought of Earth, of the cities he'd never see again, of the crew who had followed him into the teeth of impossible odds. When he opened them, he met the gaze of the spectral woman. You want something irreplaceable? He said. You'll take mine. Leave humanity's intact. Malik's head whipped toward him. Holt, the floor beneath him glowed, as if molten. The core gate's hum became a roar. Light wrapped around Holt's body, lifting him from the platform. For a heartbeat, he felt every memory in him tremble like leaves in a storm. And then, in one shattering instant, they were gone. The light faded. Holt stood on the platform, swaying slightly. His eyes were steady, but empty of recognition when they swept over Malik, the Sentinel, and the shadowy council. The lead specter inclined her head. The gate is open. The knowledge you sought is yours. From the chasms below, the flashes of light surged upward, shaping into spirals, symbols and star maps that burned themselves into Holt's mind. He stood taller now, as though remade for the war ahead. But somewhere deep in Malik's gut, a cold truth settled. The man who had just saved them no longer knew his own name. The core gate was not a structure so much as a wound in space, a chasm where geometry failed, where light bent into spirals and vanished into a glowing absence. Even the resolute Dawn's hardened viewports dimmed against the radiance that pulsed from within. Holt stood on the command deck, the faint tremor in his hands betraying the weight of what they were about to attempt. It was not fear, it was the awareness that every choice from this moment forward would be etched into the memory of the galaxy. Ambassador Rin was beside him, her voice low. If we're wrong, Holt, we won't get another chance. We're not wrong, Holt said. We can't be. Behind them, Lena adjusted the targeting arrays, her jaw set in grim focus. Malik monitored shield harmonics, his fingers flying over the controls to stabilize against the gravitational turbulence. The Dawn creaked like a living thing under strain. A holographic projection flared into existence Admiral Chiron of the Conclave fleet. His normally cold, controlled voice wavered. You have one chance, human. Activate the core gate before the harrowers breach the outer defense line. Every Conclave ship is falling back to cover you. If you fail, Holt cut him off with a curt nod. Then there won't be anyone left to judge us. The harrower fleet was a wall of black fire against the stars. Living hulls, glowing with molten veins, surged forward in formation. Their leading dreadnought unleashed a salvo that tore through a Conclave cruiser like tissue. Even at this range, the shockwave rattled the Dawn. Malik swore under his breath. We've got about 3 minutes before they're in weapon range. Core gate sequence needs 6. Then we make them need 7, Lena said, already recalibrating the plasma lances to maximum output. Holt's gaze fixed on the swirling singularity ahead. The core gate was more than a weaponette, was an ancient machine that could bend time and space in ways no civilization truly understood. It was also unstable and only partially mapped. The last crew that had tried to interface with it had never been found. Rin moved closer, her tone shifting. "You don't have to be the one to go in. We can find another pilot." "No," Holt said, not unkindly. "The Conclave doesn't believe in us, because they've never seen what we're willing to risk. They need to see." The chamber housing the core gate interface was deep within the dawn. It was a sphere of glassy metal, its inner walls flowing with streams of light that twisted in impossible geometries. Holt stepped inside, sealing the hatch behind him. His voice came through the comms, steady but weighted. "This isn't about winning a battle. It's about proving we belong, out here. So when you see that gate open, when you see the Harrowers burn you, remember, it wasn't luck, it was humanity." Outside, the Harrower dreadnoughts closed in. The Conclave fleet fought like cornered predators, each ship taking brutal damage to by seconds more. Chiron's flagship took a direct hit, its shields collapsing in a ripple of dying light. Inside the chamber, Holt reached out to the controls, if they could be called that. His hands sank into energy fields that felt warm, almost alive. The core gate responded instantly. The wound in space widened, light pouring through in cascading waves. For a moment, Holt could see not with his eyes, but in some deeper, impossible wavelattice of the galaxy itself. Every star, every gravitational thread, every potential path that could be taken. And he saw the Harrowers not as ships, but as a spreading infection. He chose the cure. Energy built to a roar that rattled every bolt in the dawn. The core gate flared, a beam of pure, focused spatial distortion lancing outward. Harrower ships caught in its path didn't explode, they simply unraveled, peeling apart into motes of light. The dreadnoughts broke formation, some trying to flee, others charging in desperation. But the gate's beam swept through them, each pass erasing dozens from existence. The starfield was littered with fading embers where monsters had been. On the bridge, Lena's voice cracked over the comms. "Holt, the gate's drawing everything from the ship's core. You have to shut it down," or Holt didn't answer. Rin's face went pale. "He's not coming back." The core gate's light intensified, the distortion spreading. For a heartbeat, it seemed as if the gate itself might consume the dawn. And then, silence. The Harrower fleet was gone. The Conclave ships floated in stunned formation. The core gate pulsed once more, and closed. The chamber where Holt had stood was empty. Rin's voice was a whisper. "He bought us more than victory. He bought us a place in history." The resolute dawn drifted in the sudden calm, her crew knowing that the final chapter had begun. The alien armada did not creep toward the core. It thundered forward like a tidal wave of steel and hatred. The Zorathi fleet, black and jagged like predators carved from shadow, emerged from hyperspace with a precision that spoke of centuries of conquest. Every sensor reading told the same grim story. Their numbers were overwhelming, their weapons unmatched in sheer destructive yield. The galactic conclave's heartworld, Valtheris Prime, shone like a jewel in the void-a-city world of spiraling crystalline spires and rivers of light. To the Zorathi, it was prey. Commander Elara Miles stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought, resolute dawn, eyes fixed on the incoming threat. For days, humans had been treated as little more than an auxiliary fast, resourceful, but not fit to command the defense of the galaxy's political heart. That ended the moment the first Zorathi warhead tore through the Conclave's outer defensive grid, like paper. "Signal the fleet," Elara ordered, her voice calm but carrying iron beneath it. "Humans take point." The alien admirals bristled at the command. On the shared holochannel, Admiral Veshran of the Drakari Coalition leaned forward, his scaled brow furrowing. "Human," he spat, "this is not your battle to lead. The Conclave Guard will..." A ripple of static cut him off as the resolute dawn surged ahead, thrusters roaring. Behind it, two more human vessels, Ironclad Mercy and Vigilant Sky, peeled out of formation, diving headlong into the swarm of incoming Zorathi craft. They didn't wait for permission. They acted. The Conclave fleet hesitated, but the tactical display spoke volumes. The humans weren't retreating. They were drawing the enemy's attention, cutting through the first wave like surgeons. Zorathi fighters tried to swarm them, only to find themselves shredded by coordinated crossfire and sudden, impossible turns that defied standard battle algorithms. On the ground, Valtheris Prime's skies lit up with defensive fire as planetary shields absorbed the first bombardments. Ambassador Rin Valar stood in the Conclave Assembly Hall. A massive chamber of glass and light, now trembling under distant impacts. Alien representatives shouted over one another, their voices rising in panic. Rin didn't flinch. "They will break through unless we let the humans lead," he said, his voice carrying over the chaos. "Impossible," barked Counselor Thurvis of the Orin. "They lack the numbers, the technology." "They have the will," Rin interrupted, his gaze hard. "And right now, that's worth more than your fleet's caution." In orbit, the battle became a storm of motion. The Resolute Dawn plunged into the Zorothi formation, deploying drone swarms programmed with split-second human improvisation routines. Routines illegal under most Conclave regulations, these drones didn't fight by the book. They made the book irrelevant. Malik Torres, piloting the ironclad Mercy, saw an opening a gap in the enemy's formation caused by a miscalculated turn. Without consulting the fleet's tactical AI, he dove straight through it, blasting apart a Zorothi carrier from inside its own hangar. His escape vector barely cleared the shockwave, but the destruction forced the enemy to pull back its forward assault line. The tide didn't turn easily. Every victory cost blood. In the vigilant sky, Tessa Yarrow coordinated orbital strikes in sync with ground-based defense cannons, weaving a lattice of fire so tight that Zorothi bombers couldn't approach without being vaporized. Her voice, calm and relentless, cut through the comms. "Sector 3, you're clear. Roll your fire forward. Don't give them space to breathe." Hours passed in fire and steel. By the time the Zorothi withdrew, the void above Velthera's prime was littered with debris hull fragments drifting among the shattered remains of Conclave and human ships alike. But the planet still stood. The humans had held the line. From the Conclave Hall, Rin sent the official transmission that would change the galaxy's politics forever. By unanimous emergency decree, human forces are recognized as a primary defense arm of the Galactic Conclave. This recognition is not symbolic, it is survival. In the shadows of the Assembly Hall, Counselor Thurvis said nothing, but his eyes told the truth. The galaxy's skepticism had just bled out into the void. The battlefield hung in a silence so vast, it felt as if even the stars were holding their breath. Debris drifted lazily through the black void. Shattered hull plating, fragments of weapons, the faint glimmer of frozen atmosphere leaking into nothingness. Captain Elias Dane stood on the Resolute's command deck, every muscle locked as the tactical readouts confirmed what they had all dared not believe. The enemy was gone. The Vrother Armada, which had swept across sector after sector, now lay broken and scattered. For a moment, no one moved, no one cheered. The crew stared at the displays, as though expecting the threat to rise again. Then the comms came alive. Across the fleet, human and alien alike, voices erupted. Applause, weeping, shouts of relief. The sound wasn't just victory, it was survival. Elias let out a long breath and allowed himself a small, tired smile. "It's over," he said, barely above a whisper. The return to the Conclave was unlike anything humanity had ever known. The massive station, a cathedral of glass and metal suspended above a golden nebula, glowed brighter than ever. Entire corridors were lined with banners from 100 worlds. And at the center of it all, the Great Hall had been transformed into a place of celebration. When the human delegation entered, Elias, Talia Vance, Commander Rourke, every alien representative stood. Not one in protest, not one in skepticism. The Conclave's speaker, a towering avian dignitary whose voice had once dripped with disdain for reckless humans, now bowed deeply before them. Today, the speaker declared, "The galaxy owes you more than thanks. It owes you its future." Talia stepped forward, her voice steady but carrying the weight of exhaustion. "We didn't fight to prove ourselves. We fought because it was right. We fought because the enemy didn't care who you were, human, alien, soldier, farmer. They would have taken all of us." She glanced at Elias, then at the alien delegates. "But if our victory means anything, it's this. Humanity belongs here, not as outsiders, not as a curiosity, but as part of this family." The chamber erupted in applause. That night, in the quiet gardens overlooking the nebula, Elias found himself alone. He thought of the friends who hadn't made it home, the ships that would never return, the scars both visible and unseen. The galaxy was safe, for now, but peace was never permanent. Talia joined him, leaning on the railing beside him. "You're thinking about the next war," she said. "I'm thinking about the next moment," Elias replied. "The next time someone underestimates us, because it will happen again." "And we'll be ready," she said with quiet certainty. Weeks later, the official proclamation came. The Conclave Charter was amended. Species classifications were revised, and under combat readiness designations, the name humanity now carried a single word beside it: trusted. The galaxy would remember the day humans were no longer the question mark, but the answer. The Conclave once doubted humanity's worth. Now they know, and somewhere among the stars a quiet warning spreads. Never mistake our kindness for weakness. We are human, and when the void calls, we will answer.